It's no secret that 2023 was not kind to Disney as a whole at the box office. They had 2 Marvel movies. They had a Lucasfilm movie, Pixar movie, a Disney proper animated movie, a Disney proper family adventure comedy type thing. And basically everything blew up in their faces other than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which ended up not starting great, but ending pretty damn well, went over $800 million. And I believe Elemental, the Pixar movie that also didn't start great, ended up doing well, but everything else kind of blew up in their faces, and they are no longer the kings of the box office, either domestically in the US or worldwide. They have been toppled by Universal, who had far less what you would call big tentpole style movies that were designed to perhaps go over $1 billion. They only had 3, really. They had, well, I guess 2, Super Mario Brothers and Fast X. I don't think they imagined Oppenheimer would be so successful, but they were able to beat Disney despite Disney having 6 or 7 movies with budgets well over $200 million, some going into $300 million. And this is a big turning point for Disney because 2024 is likely going to be very difficult for them to beat that because they've only got 1 Marvel movie. I don't believe they have a Lucasfilm movie. They do have a sequel to Inside Out coming out, so that'll probably do well. But Disney was really counting on 2023, and it did not work. For the first time since 2016, 2023 was a year in which the Walt Disney Company didn't reign supreme at the box office. Overall, despite its disappointments, Disney still managed to release 4 of the top 10 grossing movies of the year globally and 3 of the top 10 domestically. Overall, the company brought in $1.9 billion domestically and $2.92 billion internationally. Those numbers were just topped by Universal, which landed $1.94 billion domestically and $2.97 billion internationally. Yes, they just barely beat Disney at the overall box office for 2023, but there is a new king of the box office, and their name is Universal, and they did not rely so heavily on the old blockbuster strategy that Disney did, and with high risk came a lot of not reward for Disney, and certainly an enormous amount of reward for Universal. Obviously, Super Mario Brothers blew up, Oppenheimer blew up, Fast 10 probably didn't perform as well as they would have liked, but it was enough to overcome just a disappointing year all around for Disney. I don't imagine they believed a sequel to a $1 billion movie could actually only do $200 million. I don't think they imagined that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny could do poorly, but there is an enormous disconnect between Disney and their customers. And added on top of that, there's now an enormous amount of distrust. A lot of family audiences just don't trust Disney anymore. Take this from me. I'm a dad of 3 little boys, and I do not feel comfortable showing my kids a Disney program or movie that's modern, that's been made within the last 5 or 6 years, without viewing it first myself. Whereas in the past, you could kind of trust Disney that you could just kind of put your little kid in front of the movie and it was going to be wholesome. It was going to have a good message, and they would not only be entertained, but they would be able to learn something, maybe some life lessons along the way. But now Disney are no longer trying to do the life lessons. They're actually trying to influence your kids. I think that's been well documented at that point, that that's kind of a strategy of the company for a lot of the more insipid people with inside Disney proper, and has absolutely toppled an entertainment giant in 2023. Are they dead yet? Absolutely not. Are they on their last legs? No, we're not even close to that. Disney certainly has a lot of access to a lot of money. Now, they also have an enormous amount of debt, but they do have just an amazing portfolio of enormous blockbuster franchises to turn to. And eventually, you've got to figure you will get the magic back, right? Like, they can't run the company into the ground any worse than they did in 2023, right? There's no escaping that Disney didn't have a great 2023. Putting the high point of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 aside, Marvel, traditionally the most reliable of the company's studios, had a terrible year with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania critically savaged, and the Marvel significantly underperforming at the box office. It's not as if Disney's other studios fared significantly better, with Disney Animation's Wish similarly collapsing in terms of box office, while Lucasfilm's much-hyped Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny proved to be a significant disappointment on, well, almost all fronts. And the less said about The Little Mermaid and The Haunted Mansion, the better. So you look at like the slate that they actually had 3 Marvel movies. I messed that one up. We had Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. You had the Marvels. all sequels to much bigger films, and it just did not work out for them. You also had a Lucasfilm project with Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. That did not go well. Obviously, you had Pixar Animation, which used to be like the gold standard when it came to animated films. They literally could not fail. Elemental, I believe, maybe broke even. Even Disney's traditional animation studio brought out Wish, which was basically them filleting themselves on screen, and that didn't even go over. And just basically everything bottomed out for Disney in 2023, and nobody was having it. Now, 2024, it will be very difficult, even if Deadpool 3 is really good and has great word of mouth, to do better than the 3 MCU movies they had, just as far as box office numbers combined that they had in 2023. Obviously, 800 million. Actually, I think it's more like 850 for Guardians of the Galaxy. I believe Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania did 450 million, and then the Marvels did 200 million. So you would have to do something like $1.5 billion just to break even with those movies, just as far as getting back to that number. Now, I do believe that Pixar should do better because they will have the sequel to Inside Out, which is kind of weird. I thought, when I first saw it at least, that Elemental might be a sequel to Inside Out because the color palette looked almost identical to the movie Inside Out, and some of the character designs were a little too similar in my opinion. But Inside Out is quite beloved, and I think there's probably a good chance that people will give it a chance. I mean, there won't be a Star Wars movie for Lucasfilm or anything like that, so they probably, while they have a much smaller slate, it should be more successful, but it will be very difficult for them to repeat $1.9 billion domestically, $2.92 billion internationally with their smaller slate, where they don't have much Marvel content out there. They have no Lucasfilm and very limited other studios out there. So Disney kind of brought this on themselves. And I think 2023 was the great reckoning for Disney, the come to Jesus moment, where you realize we have completely lost our way. And in the meantime, we've completely lost our customer base. They don't trust us anymore. And we're probably going to have to change things up. Bob Iger has said as much. Me personally, considering Bob Iger's the one that invited all this crap into the company, I do not trust him. But hey, I'm hoping that it does turn around because I do love Disney. I have a great affinity for the company and a lot of their movies and programs and stuff like that. And I wish I could enjoy Disney content with my kids the way that my parents were able to enjoy Disney content with me, you know, when Disney had their great comeback starting with like Beauty and the Beast in the 80s or whatever. Now, Universal obviously had a better year. They had both of the massively successful Super Mario Brothers movie and Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer in its portfolio, which brought in $1.36 billion and $952 million internationally, respectively, with Fast X, a movie that arguably disappointed in terms of domestic take, also bringing in $704.9 million domestically. Universal didn't get where it was without Megan, or is it M3 Gone? I'm not really sure. And for that matter, Five Nights at Freddy's, a movie that made more than 10 times its budget when released last Halloween, or for that matter, Cocaine Bear, or Knock at the Door, or even Trolls Band Together. Universal clearly has the big hits when it needs them, but it's also got a respectable band of smaller scale successes and, bluntly, weirder movies that stand the chance to become breakout hits with very little investment. And obviously Universal has partnered with or invested in Blumhouse, which have absolutely like the magic when it comes to Halloween season. Every year they make a movie for like 10 or $15 million, and it goes well over $100 million just like domestically. Those guys blow it up every single year, and obviously that was a great partnership. You know, and Christopher Nolan is a name unto himself. I don't think there's maybe anybody at Disney right now, like creative-wise, that you can just go, oh, that's that movie. I want to go see that. It almost felt like that for Jon Favreau for a minute, but I don't even have that kind of faith in him anymore. But certainly I do in Christopher Nolan, and it sounds like Oppenheimer was much better than Tenet. I don't know, did anybody see Tenet besides me? Because I still dislike that movie. I don't even know what happened in there, which is kind of interesting because in the past, Christopher Nolan has done very high concept ideas. Think also Inception, but I was able to understand the movie and follow along the plot and really enjoy it. I love Inception. And he's also had really complex narratives. You think about like Memento, but I got the movie by the end and it was very intriguing and I went along with it. But Tenet did not do that for me. Thankfully, Oppenheimer was probably more of a straightforward movie, kind of like Dunkirk, which is also amazing. And when it comes to Super Mario Brothers, or Super Mario movie, whatever they called it. It sounds like we are going to be getting some type of shared Nintendo 3D animated universe. I've seen that movie like 7 times, probably, at least parts of it. I like Super Mario Brothers, but I remember the first movie in the 80s that was really terrible. But my kids absolutely went bananas for the Super Mario movie. And they really liked the Sonic one too for some reason, but they really liked the animation style in Super Mario, even though I thought the story probably could have been more straightforward and better. That just followed along with like a lot of the original setup from the video games and whatnot. But the kids absolutely lost their minds over that. And obviously they lose their minds over things like, what are they called? The stupid yellow minion guys. They really like that stuff too. And it definitely appears that Disney, while they used to own the family market, they do not own that anymore. And Super Mario Brothers really destroyed a ton of narratives out there that, families weren't ready to go back to movies and support them when it blew up to like such amazing heights. And obviously, I believe Fast 10, Fast X, whatever you want to call it, was probably an enormous disappointment. They had several movies go over $1 billion worldwide. Fast 10 didn't really even touch that. It probably only broke even, but it still scored a significant number worldwide. And they do have a lot of the smaller projects out there, the more indie type of movies that I didn't think we were going to see in theaters anymore. I thought we were going to strictly see that on streaming. It felt like Netflix had kind of like destroyed the entire market by going out there and buying all of them. But it's nice to see some of those smaller movies get out into theaters. Not everything needs to be a blockbuster. Not everything needs to be a sequel. You know what I mean? Not everything needs to have a budget of $250 million. And it's kind of cool that Universal was able to beat Disney, the kings of the box office, in large part to a lot of movies that had nowhere near that kind of budget. I imagine Super Mario Brothers is well on its way to being a franchise. Fast and Furious is certainly a franchise. Oppenheimer is not. That is simply a Christopher Nolan movie, and they were able to beat him with that. Now, a lot of people might be wondering, what is the state of 2024 when it comes to box office? Obviously, we just got into 2024, but there are some forecasts out there, and it does not look good. I mentioned some of the problems that Disney were going to have because they won't have as many projects out there. Almost all the studios are going to have that problem. While there are plenty of sobering misfires to go around at the 2023 box office, in a $9 billion domestic result, 2024 is poised to be, brace yourselves, significantly worse. Last month, analytics firm Gower Street said box office grosses are expected to drop to around $8 billion. Wow, over 10% drop. A figure that several studio distribution chiefs told The Wrap they are also projecting for the year. Global grosses for 2024 will reach $31.5 billion, down 5% from the $33.4 billion in 2023, Gower Street said. The biggest reason for the sharp drop is the decrease in wide releases due to the strikes, with ComScore estimating 89 films will be released in more than 2,000 theaters in 2024, compared to 100 in 2023. So right now, the forecasting model looks like 2024 is going to be a significant decrease, just kind of across the board when compared to 2023, basically due to a lack of stuff coming out. Obviously, a lot of things got delayed into 2025, including, I think, 2 Marvel projects. We were supposed to get more than one MCU movie in 2024, and it's been a very long time since we've even had like a Star Wars movie, but we should be getting Superman Legacy also in 2025. So 2024 looks like it's going to be like a regrouping period for a ton of these bigger studios. We'll see who becomes the king of the 2024 box office. I wouldn't surprise me if it is Disney, because Deadpool 3 has a chance to do very, very well. I have a feeling family audiences might forgive Disney for one weekend and go check that one out, because the first one is kind of beloved. It might be like the last really great Pixar movie that we had. So Disney has a chance, but they absolutely got smoked in 2023 by like Oppenheimer and Super Mario and a bunch of other movies that really weren't even flagship tentpole movies for Universal Studios, who kind of spread their risk around, mitigated it a little bit, and obviously partnered with Blumhouse, who know what they're doing when it comes to horror movies and stuff like that. But Disney should not be proud of where they are heading into 2024. It is probably going to be another rough year kind of for everybody. And hopefully, by the time we get to 2025, maybe all these changes that Bob Iger is promising will actually come to fruition, and we will get a good MCU again. And maybe we'll get good Star Wars, although I'm not really counting on it. Maybe we'll get good Pixar by then. And I think, people will forgive Disney in the end. if they find their way again. But if they continue down this current track of alienating people and trying to find a new audience, even though they were the king of the family audience, it is not going to go well for them, because it certainly blew up in their faces in 2023 and will go down as a year Disney would like to forget. And there was a lot of negative press around Disney. I've been covering all that stuff and will continue to do so. Obviously, I do the videos here on YouTube, which are absolutely amazing, but I do much more long form type discussions with really awesome people like Aaron Sparrow. We cover Disney a lot on our Geek Fix podcast, which is a staple on the Thinking Critical Patreon, if you have not checked that one out. Specifically, the Sparrow's Never Ending Christmas Tree tier, where you get the Geek Fix. You also get the comic book solicitation videos. You also get another extra weekly comic book review. We get the Comics Guilds there and lots of other fantastic stuff. And you also get an audio track of every single video I put out on YouTube, where you can download it and listen to it like it's a podcast. If that interests you, or more Aaron Sparrow content interests you, there's a link in the video description. And I just have a feeling that you are going to love the stuff we're doing on Patreon as well.